Liverpool could be facing a major decision over Curtis Jones's future, with the midfielder situation becoming increasingly difficult to ignore, as Inter Milan step up their efforts to bring him to Serie A. Let's break this down. There is so much to discuss in today's video, so be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for daily Liverpool content. Jones has now been described as doing everything he can to complete a move to Inter before the transfer deadline, and that claim will undoubtedly raise eyebrows among Liverpool supporters. The 25-year-old has not featured in either of Liverpool's final 2 pre-season friendlies, despite being involved in the squad earlier in the summer, with Andoni Iraola officially attributing his absence to a hip injury. However, Jones instead took part in an individual training session at the AXA while Liverpool faced Como, adding another layer to the growing speculation surrounding his future. And with Inter Milan preparing to return with an improved offer, this could be a situation that develops very quickly. According to reports, Liverpool's asking price has now dropped to around €35 million, or roughly £29.9 million. That is particularly significant because the gap between the two clubs is reportedly now less than £5 million. Fabrizio Romano has also provided a major update, explaining that Inter are ready to ramp up their pursuit, while claiming that Jones is doing everything he can, so to speak, to join Inter. Now, that does not necessarily mean Jones is refusing to play or deliberately forcing Liverpool into selling him, but his recent absence from Liverpool's final friendly matches, combined with the latest comments surrounding his desire to join Inter, has certainly intensified the feeling that his future could lie away from Anfield. And there is another major factor here. Inter have now agreed to send Davide Fratese on loan to Lazio, which should allow the Italian club to focus their attention on getting a deal for Jones over the line before the September 1st deadline. For Jones, the attraction is obvious. He wants regular first-team football, and despite making a career-high 49 appearances for Liverpool last season, only 28 of those came as a starter. That is a huge number of appearances, but it also highlights the problem. Jones is playing regularly enough to remain an important squad member, yet perhaps not regularly enough to feel like a guaranteed starter. Liverpool, meanwhile, would be losing a homegrown player who can operate in multiple midfield positions and has been part of the club for virtually his entire career. So while Inter may be closing in, Liverpool have to decide whether around £30 million represents good value for a player who still has plenty to offer, or whether keeping Jones could ultimately prove to be the better decision. And this situation becomes even more interesting when you consider that Jones may not be the only young midfielder heading for the exit. Stefan Bajcetic is attracting interest from Getafe, while Harvey Elliott's future also remains uncertain. Yet despite the possibility of multiple midfield departures, there has been little indication that Liverpool are preparing to bring in another midfielder before the window closes. Instead, the focus remains firmly on strengthening the attack. That could make Jones's situation one of the most intriguing stories to watch over the next 2 weeks, because if Inter can bridge that remaining gap, and Jones really is pushing for the move, Liverpool could soon be forced into a very significant decision over one of their own. And if this transfer does happen, it could leave Liverpool with a midfield situation that looks very different by the time the window slams shut. In other news, Liverpool have already made a number of important additions this summer, but according to Jamie Carragher, there is still one major area of the squad that could cause serious problems for Andoni Iraola this season, and it is right in the middle of the pitch. The former Liverpool defender has raised major concerns over the club's midfield options, specifically the lack of a natural number 6. While the focus has largely been on strengthening the attack before the transfer window closes, Carragher believes Liverpool could be making a mistake by failing to address what he sees as a glaring weakness. Speaking on the overlap, Carragher was blunt about the situation, saying, "The midfield issue for me is still a huge problem for Liverpool." And his concerns centre around the amount of space Liverpool have been leaving through the middle of the pitch. Ryan Gravenberch operated as the number 6 during Liverpool's title-winning campaign, but Carragher believes last season exposed the limitations of using him in that role, particularly when the midfield was instructed to push forward and left too much space behind. That could become an even bigger issue if Dominik Szoboszlai is deployed alongside Gravenberch as part of a double pivot. Carragher explained, "The problem Liverpool had last season was there was space everywhere in Liverpool's midfield. That has not gone away at all." He then questioned whether moving Szoboszlai deeper could actually make the problem worse. That's only going to get bigger with the deployment of Szoboszlai in midfield. It looks like they're going to play him, rather than as a number 10, almost as a central midfield player alongside Gravenberch. And that is just pure box-to-box. And that led to one of Carragher's biggest warnings yet. "I look at that midfield 3 and I worry about Liverpool." The interesting part is that Carragher isn't questioning the individual quality of Liverpool's midfielders. He openly acknowledged that players such as Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, and Florian Wirtz are all capable of producing at the highest level. The concern is whether they possess the right combination of qualities to function effectively as a midfield unit. As Carragher put it, "You can't say Gravenberch is not a really good player, or Wirtz, or Szoboszlai. But as a midfield 3, I look at that and think, oh no, there's almost too much quality, but they all want to go and play and run." And perhaps most worryingly, Carragher believes the warning signs have already appeared during pre-season. Even in pre-season, the space is coming through the middle. That is where the argument for a new defensive midfielder becomes particularly important. Alexis Mac Allister is another player who could potentially operate deeper, but Carragher questioned whether that would actually maximize his strengths. What's the point of Mac Allister if he's not your passer? Because he's not running everywhere. He's supposed to sit in midfield and dictate the play. Carragher also pointed out that Gravenberch isn't a traditional all-action defensive midfielder in the mold of someone like Moises Caicedo. Gravenberch isn't what you'd call a complete midfielder. He's not a Caicedo. He's probably got a slightly different game. He's not just an out-and-out number 6.